Hi, and welcome to another PowerShell quick tip video. In this video, we're going to be doing an investigation into why an Active Directory account got locked out and figure out exactly what computer it's coming from. And then what we'll actually do is investigate on that computer to see what might be causing that lockout on that user, see what kind of process might be using it, or just really a little bit more details on why an account is actually locked out. Now, this is especially useful if you currently work in a enterprise, large, small, medium. You're going to have to deal with account lockouts and kind of find out where they're coming from, especially if they constantly lock out. This is definitely where you'd want to pull out a tool like this. So here I actually have a test employee here. If we actually just refresh this, and we go into it, we're going to see that the account's not locked out. So we're going to be locking the account pretty shortly. And we are going to actually investigate to see if we can find out what exactly caused it. So let's just go ahead and let's try to see if we can actually write the script to find out our locked out events. The account was locked out just a couple hours ago. I unlocked it. So now we'll be able to actually see another lockout, because we're going to pretend that it locks out again, and you guys are going to see how we can actually find this information out. So the first thing we're going to want to do is create a variable here. This one you can name it quite a few different things. I like to name it $PDC. And let me just go ahead and actually just zoom in here a little bit so you guys can actually see the code a little bit better here. So we're going to make this PDC equal to a set of parentheses, and we're going to do a get-AD domain, because we're doing this on Active Directory once again. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a .pdc emulator here. And what this is going to do, this is going to grab our primary domain controller. So if we actually look at this, we are going to see that it is equal JP-V 2022, which is perfect. That's what I would actually expect it to do. Now, there are multiple ways to get event log for lockout events. In our case, what we're actually going to be doing is doing a get win event. So here, if we actually just do a get win event, and we're going to do it on the computer name of PDC. So this is something that you would actually be able to run remotely, or something that you run directly on your domain controller. It's kind of up to you, and depending on how your environment is set up, if you're able to do remote PowerShell calls. So if we do this, we are going to get a lot of events. And as you can already see, we see that the get win event log count 439 is exceeded the Windows event log API limit, which is 256. Adjust filter to return less log names. So that's perfectly fine. We can do a filter hash table here. Now, what we do have to do is we do have to create that filter hash table. So we're going to create a variable called filter hash, and right above here is where we're going to actually declare it. So let's create our filter hash here. And to create a hash table, it is just the @ symbol and a pair of curly brackets. And what we're going to do first is we're going to do a log name is equal to security. So that is our first filter in our hash. As we can see, if we do this, we still get a lot of events. So what we actually want is just to grab the specific event ID for a lockout, and we want just a specific time, because we don't necessarily want to look at forever, especially depending on how big your log file is. You could go back a decent amount of time. As we can see, we're getting a lot of information here. We're just going to stop that request, and we are going to keep adding on to our filter hash. So we want the ID to be 4740. And what we also want to do is a start time. And what I want the start time to be is we're going to do a parentheses. We're going to do a get date. And after the closing parentheses of get date, we're going to do add hours. And all I want to do is I want to do the last 4 hours. I don't really need any more than that. The last 4 hours will get me exactly what I need. You can definitely adjust this based on what you need for your environment. So once we actually have this here, if we hit run, we are going to see that we get one event, which is great. That's what we expected. 7:13. Right now it's 7:24. This was right before I made the video. I purposely locked out an account just to have an event in the log here. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to store these results to lockout events. And once we have the lockout events here, and we're going to actually name it lockout events DC, because we're going to have something a little bit further down the line where we might need just lockout events. So once we actually have this here, we're just going to run it so we can get our variables here. We can see if we look at what's inside the variable, just make this a little bit bigger, we see that we get our one event. We don't see a whole lot of details though. So what we actually want to do is lockout events, and we're going to pipe that to a select star to see exactly what's available to us in here. And we're going to see that there is quite a bit. Let me just expand this out here. We're going to see that we see a message. We can see that an employee was locked out. We can see that we can already see the computer name here, which if this is what you want, this is all you want, that is great. But we're going to show you a little bit better on how we can actually get the name of that computer and then do a little bit more investigating as well afterwards. So as we can see a bunch of different details here, and we can see that there are some properties where they are event properties. We don't really see what they are. So let's go ahead and let's dive a little bit deeper in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to do lockout events DC dot properties here. Now, as you can see, we actually have some properties and there are some values here, which is perfect. That's exactly what we would want. So let's actually go ahead and let's make basically our filter, which is going to select all the values that we really want from this lockout DC. So let's actually just minimize this here. So we have our lockouts events DC. Now what we're going to do is we are just going to do a select. And what we need to do here is we're going to have to do a few expressions in our select statement. So in order to do an expression here, you could do the @ symbol and curly bracket. So it's basically a hash table to do these calculated or dynamic fields here. We're going to do name is going to be equal to locked user. And we're going to put the expression here as equal $_ dot properties. And we're going to do 0 dot value. Now, if we go ahead and we just select this here, properties 0, everything looks good. Let me just get this here. Let me just make sure that everything is spelt properly. Oh, and I actually just found out why. So what we need to do is in this expression, we need to evaluate this properties dot value here. So what we actually need to do is put this in a set of curly brackets here. So your $_ dot properties square bracket 0 square bracket dot value does need to be inside of curly brackets here. And I think that that's going to work. Let's go ahead and let's just see what it gives us. There you go. Locked user is employee 1, which is exactly what we should be seeing. So now we have our first value. Now, of course, what we need is we need the computer that it came from, the domain controller that it locked, and the time created. Those are all things that are very, very handy. So what I like to do And just to make this a little bit more readable, what you can actually do is use these, I'm not too sure, they're kind of like apostrophes in the air. So you would usually do them with the key right beside the number 1 and above the tab key. If you just press that, you're going to get this little dash here. Just put a comma right in front of it. And what we could just do is do a enter here. And then we can do an @ symbol and then another set of curly brackets. And we're going to see now those red squigglies are gone, so that's okay. Basically, it lets you continue your command on a different line. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do the exact same thing. So we're going to have another calculated value here, and we're going to do source computer. And the value of where that comes from is going to be 1.value. Now, if we go ahead and we look at this now, we will see, just make this a little bit bigger. We will see the locked user is employee 1, source computer is desktop-ppd ctck, which is perfect. That is the desktop that I actually locked it out on. So we're already in a very, very good spot. So let's go ahead and let's add another calculated value here. And we're going to do domain controller. The domain controller is at the properties for here .value. And if we go ahead and we look at this once again, we are, you just scroll up a little bit, and there we see it, our domain controller, which is JP-V 2022, which is exactly what we want. And then our last one here, we can just make this on the same line. We're going to do time created. So if we go ahead and we run this entire code now, we're going to see that we have a lockout event at 7:13 employee 1, which is exactly what we want here. Perfect. Now, let's go ahead and let's go a little bit further here. And let's try and see on that locked out computer to see where it can be coming from. And before we do that, let's go ahead and let's lock out the account once more here. So let's just do employee 1 test. I might have to actually unlock the account. Give me 1 second here. Yeah, there you go. So it is locked out. Let's go ahead. Let's unlock it. And let's go back and let's create another lockout here. So that's 1 attempt. This is the second attempt. And the next one is when it's going to lock out here. And we should say, yep, it says locked out. So now if we go ahead and we run this code again, it might take just a little bit of time. And there we have it. So we have our employee 1 here as well. And we have the 7:38, which is right now, and 7:13. So we can see that there's 2 events. They got locked out on the same computer. So let's go ahead and let's investigate to see why exactly that's happening. Now, what we're going to need is we're going to need to get the events from that computer, and we're going to need another filter hash, because the events that we're going to be looking for are going to be different. And we already know that we need to really limit how many results we get back with the filter hash. So we're going to create the filter hash right away. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to create that hash table. And we're going to do log name is equal to security once again. And we're going to do the ID. This time the ID is going to be equal to 4625. And basically that is an incorrect login on a audit failure. And then our start time is going to be, again, equal to a get date. Now, I like to do this one a little bit longer than the last one. So we're going to do 12 hours here, minus 12 hours. Just to see if maybe it locked out other times or anything like that. Sometimes that could be helpful. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do a lockout events. And we're going to make that equal to get win event. And we're going to do computer name. Now, what we can actually do is do a for each lockout in lockout events DC. We can get these lockout events. And then we can specify our lockout dot source computer here. And then a filter hash table is going to be our filter hash. And then what we want to do is a very similar idea to what we did up here. We're going to be grabbing all the events. So what we can actually just do right now is let's just visualize what we have right now in lockout events here with the for each. So if we actually do this here, and we are going to see the code is already done. Let's scroll up here. And as you can see, we can see an account failed to log in. Again, there's not a lot of information unless we like really deep dive into it. There's not going to be a whole lot going on. So what we need to do here is lockout events, and then we're going to do another select statement with a bunch of different calculated values here. So we're going to copy paste the ones from before. We're going to have to change them. That is definitely something that you will notice. You will have to actually change these, because if we just leave them as is, we're going to have problems. So if we go ahead and we just run this entire code once again, and it is actually done. Now you're going to see that we got really weird values. We got good values at the top. We got our 2 lockouts. And then we didn't really get a whole lot afterwards. So let's go ahead and let's see what's going on. So first, let's make sure our lockout here is getting the proper computer here. And it doesn't seem like it is. So let's look at what lockout is equal here. And lockout, see, that is one thing you will notice is we will not be able to use these calculated values because we didn't actually change this. So that is one thing that you might get caught on as well when you're practicing writing these scripts, is let's go ahead and let's modify the object as well as when we filter it. This way, once we actually filter it and we then go look at it, we only have the details we want. And now if we actually run this, we're going to see that we don't get any red errors. We still don't get exactly what we want just yet because we still have to make some changes. But as you can see, we have source computer. It says administrator domain. It says S100, which is a invalid SID. So we can see that there's some values that are definitely a little bit wonky here. So what we actually need to do for the ID of 4625, the locked user. So if we go lockout events here, and we just look at these again, and if we do a select star, we'll really see these. So if we do lockout events, pipe that to select star, you will see all of these once again. And then we can do, of course, lockout events, dot properties, and we're going to get a bunch of different values. Once again, we can see all the different values that it gives us. Now, I've already done the work and calculated which value is equal to what. So we have our locked user, which is properties 5. So it's at the 6th spot because we always start at 0. And that's going to be the locked user. After that, we're going to have a logon type here, which is very useful to find out for lockouts. We're also going to have a logon process name. And let's create one more here. And our last one is going to be process name. So we've changed locked user to 5. Logon type is going to be the properties 10. Logon process name is going to be properties 11. And the process name is going to be properties 18. And we still want the time created. I really like the time created. It just gives you a much better idea of what exactly is going on. So now if we go ahead and we look at this now, there it is. So now we can actually go ahead and we can see all of the lockouts on the computer, exactly where they are coming from. We can even see that there's been some attempts for test N4 with some wrong logins as well. It'll tell you exactly what time it is, the logon process. And this just lets you to be able to take that information, maybe throw it into Google to see exactly what is causing it. Basically, all I was trying to do was launch Microsoft Edge as a new user. So of course, this doesn't really give that whole bunch of details, but it gives me the time, and we can go further into the logs in the computer as well. Really, the majority of the usefulness of these scripts are really finding out these lockout events DC is really scanning your domain controllers and finding out where the account is locking out from, because this is where a lot of times people will get stuck, is figuring out where they're coming from. Once you know where they're coming from, finding out on that source machine can be very, very useful. Let's say it is an application, a web application that you're launching. It's going to detect it as the server, and then the server might give you some better information of what exactly is causing it, or it could be the Wi-Fi logins if everything is integrated through Active Directory for that as well. So there are a lot more ways to go on this, but this script should get you really well set up to be able to investigate lockouts and seeing more so where they're coming from, what the login type is, if it's an interactive login, if it's a network login. Just have a much better idea of where your logins are coming from. Hopefully that helps you guys out. If you guys have anything that you guys would like to see as a quick tip, please let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll do my best to do every single one because I think that it is a big benefit to the community. Please, if you haven't already, also hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and also if you haven't already, hit that notification bell to be notified when that next video comes in, and I will see you guys on the next one.